Members of the committee, I've been approached by the Councillor John Halsall, which is the next application on the agenda at the High Street Wargrave, and he told me he's not going to be here till sort of 9 o'clock, and I didn't think we would whiz through the agenda quite as quickly as we have, so I am going to take the following application next, which is agenda item 21, which is Anderson Crescent. It's a full application for two two-bedroom flats and two one-bedroom flats with parking. And before the committee is the applicant is WHL, which is Woking Housing Limited, and we did go on a site visit back in 2015. Right, and I've just got a declaration of interest from my colleague to my right.
Thank you, Chairman. I have just had I've just been made a director of one of the building companies or development companies that is owned by Woking Borough. It's an associated company, it's not WHL, but I think it would be prudent for me to withdraw from this application, not vote on it, and not to take part in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. The site is located adjacent to Woking Borough Council boundary with Reading Borough Council. The local area is predominantly residential, and the site itself is a gap between two-storey residential buildings. The proposal is a resubmission of application reference F2015-0073, which was approved by Planning Committee in June of 2015. Here is the new proposed site plan. The current scheme itself differs from the approved 2015 application in two respects. The first is the installation of solar panels to the south-facing roof slope of the proposed dwellings. These solar panels are a relatively common feature of residential areas, and therefore this element of the scheme is considered acceptable in respect of character and appearance, and is considered not to have an adverse impact on the street scene. The second amendment from the approval is the insertion of additional car parking along the access road into the site, which can be seen just here. The parking proposed here is not for the residential units, but it's actually to provide additional space which replaces the lost informal parking for local residents within the site. The additional parking would not have an adverse impact in terms of highway safety and access. The proposed amendments sought are considered to be in accordance with the borough's parking standards and would not result in any harm to residential amenity or local character. The scheme is essentially the same as the previously approved scheme which has been before this committee. These photos here just illustrate the front and rear viewpoints. The scheme has commenced in terms of development, but that is the previously approved scheme that's commenced. For members' information, all of the pre-commencement conditions relating to the original consent have been discharged by the applicant, and therefore the conditions within the officer's recommendation have been reworded to ensure that all of the development is in accordance with the approved details. So officers recommend this application for approval subject to the conditions within the officer's report and amendments to some of the conditions as outlined within the members' update. The amendments to the conditions is just really to tweak them so that they read as adequate planning conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we have one speaker for this, which is Darren Poe's WHL applicant.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words in support of our application. Obviously, the development provides much needed affordable housing to the Shinfield Wigley Wood area, utilising land with little amenity value. Application, as the planning officer said, is part retrospective, and there's two amendments which we feel improves the existing scheme. It increases the number of parking spaces that we've got from 8 to 9, which will inevitably improve parking to the area. And as you can see, we've also installed solar panels to the build, which will reduce energy usage and energy bills for low-income holders. As already mentioned, works are progressing on site, progressing well, and we've complied with all the pre-commencement conditions to date. Hopefully you'll look favourably on our application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Any at all? None whatsoever? Wayne, why not?
It's only a quick one. Just out of interest, why has that come to the committee? As it's a very minor amendment and it's a good amendment.
The applicant is Wokingham Housing Limited, who are an affiliated business with the council, so any application from them has to come, well, any full application has to come before the planning committee.
Even as minor as an amendment to an existing major application.
If they had submitted it as a non-material application, then it wouldn't have come before planning committee, but as it came in as a full application and not a non-material amendment, then it has to be.
Remember that next time.
I think my understanding is because it's outside the existing red line plan, the additional parking was the reason why it needed a full plans application.
Thank you very much. Really isn't any more then. We have the recommendation set out on page 147 to approve it with the conditions as set out on the informatives, and as we've been told, there's the one or two changes, isn't there? Well, conditions 7 and 8 on the members' update. So all those in favour of approval, please show, and that is unanimous. Thank you, members. Region Sports Ground, full application for artificial grass pitch, perimeter, gated entrance, maintenance store plus grass mound. It's before the committee, it's a major application. As you have spied, Angus has left as he declared an interest. I'll once again hand over to Mr. Kumar.
Thank you, Chairman. The site is an established sports ground located along the A4 Bath Road. It's located to the south of the Bath Road as demonstrated in this plan up there. The site is within close proximity of the settlements of Woodley, Charvel and Sonning, but itself it's in the countryside. The proposal seeks approval of an artificial grass pitch which would measure 122 metres by 80 metres. The pitch would be artificially lit and would be bound with post and rail fencing. It is also proposed to include hard standing around the pitch for spectators to use and also for emergency vehicle access. There would be 4 floodlighting columns, 2 to the southern side of the pitch and 2 to the north. The columns would be 15 metres in height, which is the same height as the existing columns. A storage container would be located to the southwest of the pitch for equipment, and this is to be coloured in green. Environmental health officers have advised that the proposed level of lighting would not have an adverse impact, subject to the inclusion of a condition to control the hours of use and pitch lighting hours. Whilst it's acknowledged that the site will be used more than it currently is, it is considered that the level of use would not have an impact on residential amenity. It should be noted that the hours of use are not being altered from the current hours of use. Environmental health officers have advised that a condition for additional lighting should be required. This should include details of any additional baffles or louvres, which could further minimise any potential light spill. The applicant is proposing an additional 50 vehicle parking spaces within the site, which is considered acceptable by highways officers and in line with our standards. It is advised that the proposed development would not result in any harm to the local highway network. However, highways officers have requested a condition requiring an event management plan to be submitted to understand what arrangements are in place for matches and larger events at the site. Impact on neighbour amenity is controlled by condition 11 and 12. Moreover, condition 5 requires the submission of landscaping details, which should include details of how boundary treatment can be strengthened, which would further screen the site from public vantage points. Here are some photos of the site. So the top left just showing the site from the access, the top right image showing the A4 Bath Road. The bottom left-hand image here just shows the care home from within the site, and the bottom right-hand picture just the pitch as it is existing. The officers recommend the application for approval, subject to the condition within the officer's report and amendments to some of the conditions within the members' update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one registered speaker then, which is Gary Reynolds, the CEO for Red Leisure's Rams Club. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I was told I've got 3 minutes, but normally I can talk for Britain, so if you need this to stretch out longer, I'll happily oblige. You've had most of the details and the technical application, which has been dealt with generally by the RFU, who will be making the installation. What we wanted to do this evening is to give you a bit of context in the reasons that we would like this to go through and the impact it will have on the club, and particularly sporting facilities for the kids in the area. I carry around with me an Ofsted report from the summer of 2014 with a lot of comment in there from Sir Michael Wilshire. It acknowledges there's a growing gap between the sporting facilities provided to kids in private schools and the sporting facilities to kids in the state sector. Just to give you some facts on that, 7% of children at any time are educated in the private sector, and yet 41% of the medal winners for Team GB in the 2012 Olympic Games have been educated privately. In rugby, in the Premiership, England eligible men, 61% of them have been educated privately. The only real team sport that makes a big difference in this regard is football, which is more aligned with the 93%, 7% of elite achievement that one would expect. Ofsted sees successful sports clubs as a vital part of providing better sporting opportunities for state school children. And this is something that Reading Enzians Rams feels we've been doing for a number of years. We run 11 youth age groups from age 6 to 16. We run the Wokingham Schools Floodlit Tournament for a number of the schools at our own expense to encourage youngsters to get involved in the game. We run a cult section for 17s and 18-year-olds. Our youth section has grown from just over 300 in 2014, 305 to over 400 today. We've had an increase of 33% in 4 years, which we think is a tremendous testament to the work that we do. We run 5 senior men's teams. Our first 15 plays at National 2. We are the most successful and biggest club in Berkshire, with just 3 levels from Premiership. We're now pioneering growth in women's rugby. We started our ladies section in the summer of 2016. We've got 33 female players committed to playing the game, and we also started a girls team. At every level, Reading Enzians Rams is a huge success, but this success has hammered our pitches. It's simply not now possible for us to maintain our grass surfaces in good conditions. I think some of the pictures we put up previously to the RFU showed a huge amount of wear on 2 of the pitches in particular. So the overuse has taken its toll. The RFU is resourcing over 30 new artificial grass pitches in England. It's chosen Reading Enzians Rams as its partner for one of those pitches. We're confident that we can grow our youth numbers, predominantly from the state schools in the Wokingham area, by another third to 600 by 2020. And we're confident that we can increase the participation of the girls and females in the game. We're confident that we can help to address the imbalance between the facilities provided to kids in the private sector and those in the state sector, but we clearly can't do that with the limited pitch capacity that we have at Old Bath Road at the moment.
If I could ask you to...
And for that reason, we're asking you to approve the application.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chair.
Thank you. We could change one thing. Right, members. Questions? Michelle, then Bill. Oh, then Malcolm, thank you.
Can we ask if the applicant would consider using the same kind of lights they proposed for the Woking Embrook Football Club? They're directed very well, and they seem to give no problems at all to the local residents. Ask Mark Ashwell which ones they were.
Some lighting details have been provided, but further lighting is required by condition. That lighting, the details required by condition are baffles and roofs which will help stop any light spill to the adjacent sites or to the outside of the site. I can bring that to the applicant's attention when I send out a decision notice and give them details of the Embrook sports field and let them know that this is something that's worked in our borough. But they have submitted lighting details already which are considered acceptable by our environmental health officers.
They are being used for pitches for working at night and things like this, and the residents don't seem to have a problem with it. If you looked at the previous planning application for the Embrook Football Club on Old Forest Road in Embrook actually, but across from Winnish, and there seems to be no real complaints from what they've done. So it's focus lights rather than that. There's less than a 5% spill outside of the pitch, so that would be a good thing to do.
Thank you.
Can I say, we have lighting on the ground already, which has quite a lot of spillage. It's old lighting, it was approved in the late 90s. We've seen the new lights in operation, which are at Aylesbury, and you could almost stand behind them when it's dark and not be able to read something. So it's very focused lighting, and we're assured there will be no spillage to any of the areas around.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I do know the ground. I have visited it. I think any improvement on...
Oh, do you want to speak on?
Sorry, any improvement on sports facilities, especially for young people, is a great idea. A couple of concerns. One is the Sunrise aged persons accommodation. With the increase in capacity, do you see an increase in noise? Or and also, the point you made with lighting, I do appreciate that the lighting was used on these pitches, and we've used it in Woodley on the 3G pitch there, is more direct. But it wouldn't flood over onto those. But it's the noise aspect as well, from greater increasing crowd. Second point, sorry, comes back to highways. The access to this ground is always very difficult, I think, when you're not aware, because if you come from Reading, you've actually got to cross the A4 to get into it. And I'm just concerned that on a busy match day, would that be a safe route to get into? Because you cross the A4 and then you go down that surface road into the ground. It's just a concern that the amount of increase, possibly increasing traffic, might cause a problem.
Yeah, I understand the point. I think when we've had a look at it, the increase they're proposing is only an additional 50 parking spaces, which actually is above what they would actually require. The standards are 20 spaces per pitch plus 1 space per 10 spectator seats, but there are no fixed seating from my understanding, so it's been difficult to ascertain the level. So when the 50 was proposed, it was deemed to be in excess of what we needed. So on that basis, and what they can physically fit on site, the additional up to 50 wasn't deemed to be a significant issue, considering that there haven't been any major accidents and stuff in the application.
Just one on that one point. Would it be something considered for on event days that they're right?
Well, the condition that we've asked for about the events, that could be something that we could have a look at, subject to, we could monitor some events and see how they turn out, and it may be that on those days the police are brought in or hired to obviously prevent or have that road, that turning blocked.
Yeah, because you could go up to Wargrave,
come back,
or Wargrave up to the Sonning Turn and come back, Okay. And you're quite happy with the sound of the noise?
Yeah, in respect of noise, if the club wanted, they could use the existing pitches for all of the hours that they're asking for. It's just that now with this pitch, it's more likely that there will be greater noise, but they don't necessarily need planning permission to use the pitches up till 10 o'clock weekdays. Environmental health officers have looked at the scheme and they've advised that there'll be no significant impact in terms of noise, just purely because of the distance of the pitch, which is in excess of about 50 or 60 metres from the side wall of the care home. And in addition to that, like I said in the presentation, the condition 5 requires additional planting, strengthening the boundary treatment, so any noise is considered to just be negligible.
Thank you.
No, I don't think I need. Thank you. Malcolm? Then,
yes. Very simple question, really. I assume you have spectators watching the matches and so on. Where do they stand? Is that what this black line is? That hard standing?
Can the case officer answer first, please?
Sorry. Is that the hard standing there?
Yes, so the hard standing is up here. So it's actually proposed on all four sides, but it's more likely that they would be standing along here or down here, which is closest to the parking areas. The other place is just around here because this is where the existing clubhouse is. So it's unlikely that they would stand around here because it's not really that close to the parking, but definitely along here.
And the extra level of activity that's going on.
Speaker, please.
Sorry. The extra activity and usage. Is enough space there to cope with a larger spectator crowd, presumably?
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you.
Wayne?
I think you're doing a great job. I think that what you've done over the last few years is brilliant because you're now keeping local boys in the local area and then instead of them travelling to Henley, because at one point I thought Henley was only covering the district, so I think you're doing a great job. But the question is, where are these 57 spaces going? That's the first point, and I think we have a slightly bigger issue during the day, because I go past this 2 or 3 times a day, and I think the issue we've got is where the staff from the Sunrise are parking along the actual avenue. So, you know, that for me, there's an issue there rather than an issue from the rugby club. But where are the 57 going?
It's better just to show you on this plan, but the additional parking is going in along here.
Oh, okay. So bordering the A4?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Are you happy with that response, Wayne?
Very good.
Yeah, if you just turn your mic off there, please. Thank you. Any more questions before we go to the vote, members? Right. Page 172 then is recommendation for approval with additions and informatives, and then in the update there's conditions 5 and conditions 12 amended. So all those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous, so that's approved. Thank you, members. Oh, Philip, could you just go and get access for us, please? Thank you. No, we left his stuff. I was going to go in. To the item that I moved back, so Councillor Horsell could be with us. I had promised that we wouldn't get to it till 9 o'clock, but then we did whiz through some of the other applications a little faster than I thought. So we come to the last item, number 20, page 119, which is 15 to 27, the High Street, Walgrave. Full application for the demolition of car showroom plus Suncroft for a proposed erection of 10 dwellings with car park and community space, bin and cycle storage. It's before the committee as it has been listed by Councillor Horsell, and the committee went on a site visit on Friday. I'll hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. There are 2 quick updates to inform members of. The first one is that it's a major application, not a minor application, as stated in the committee report. The second update as well is that a condition is recommended that additional details regarding levels are submitted to and approved by the Council. Moving on to the proposal, the Chairman has outlined the description of development. It's probably worth noting that the 10 units include 6 2-bedroom houses, 2 2-bedroom flats and 2 3-bedroom flats. On the screen now is the site location plan outlined in red. You can just see it's on the junction there of Walgrave Hill and the High Street. This is an aerial photo just to show the site in a bit more context, and you can just see the garage on the corner there, and the residential property, just where the cursor is Suncroft, which is the one being demolished. Members went on the site to consider the proposed, so I won't dwell on the photos too long, but the photograph at the top is just a montage from the High Street. You can see Walgrave Hill and the existing garage there where the cursor is. The two photos below that are just looking north-east, and you can just see the garage there. You can also just make out the bottom left one, the neighbouring property 9 High Street, which is mentioned in my report. Starting with the top left, this is a photo from the access which will serve the two properties going to the rear of the site. The bungalow to the right is the property known as the Garth, which is mentioned in my report. Moving on to the top right, that's taken from the application site, and you can just see the garage to the right. Members will also probably remember the slightly unusual front door to the property there. Going to the bottom left, this is looking back the other way, you can see the garage there, and you can just make out the apex of the roof to the Garth, the neighbouring property. And the bottom right is pretty much the same location, but just slightly further back. The top two pictures on the bottom left picture, our members will probably remember that there's quite a sort of large parcel of land next to the property. It is residential garden, but it doesn't really seem to be doing too much at the moment. And those photos just depict there. If you look at the top right picture, you can just see the roof form of 9 High Street, which the proposed dwellings will back onto. The bottom right-hand picture is taken from the rear garden at 9 High Street, and the proposed development will just be located to the left, slightly out of the shot there. Moving on to the site plan, this is a coloured site plan just to show the developments. The main building which will face onto the High Street, these will be where the four houses will be. This will be where the 4 flats will be located, and to the rear is where the 2 2-bedroom houses will be located. You can just see the existing access where the cursor is, and it will be moved from the existing access, which is on the junction here with Wargrave Hill on the High Street. The access to the properties to the rear will be through this public right-of-way, which is a private road as well. Just goes through here. This is a context plan, grain and development plan, and you can just, this is the footprint of the proposed building, and really all this shows is how it will sit into the historic pattern of development. And I felt it was pertinent to show this because it does show that it fits in very well actually with the sort of footprints of the existing buildings, and also how the settlement of Wargrave has evolved. This is street scene and elevations. The top picture, you can see the development to the left-hand side here, comprises of sort of late Victorian and Edwardian design features, and also some arts and crafts sort of style features in there as well. You can just see the properties to the right here which are existing, and this is 9 High Street. One thing to note is the development is just a notch lower than actually the neighbouring properties there. And the slide at the bottom is just the rear elevation of that building to the front. This is the side elevation of where the flats will be, and this will be the sort of elevation. It doesn't actually front onto Wargrave Hill, but it's the elevation which will face Wargrave Hill. And these windows here all serve sort of secondary windows and staircases, none are principal windows to habitable rooms. And this is the elevation which will face 9 High Street. These are the elevations of the 2 properties to the rear of the site. These are some CGI images. It just shows the existing site to the left, bottom left, and then how the proposed site will look in the street scene to the top right. And once again, this is the same CGI image, but this is looking the other way. To conclude, Chairman, it is considered there are benefits with the proposed development insofar as removing the existing garage on site, which is considered to be unsightly, and the site is obviously within a conservation area and also in a residential area, so there are improvements in removing that usage to residential development of this nature. There will also be some highway improvements in terms of removing the existing access which is on the junction of Wargrave Hill and the High Street, and also quite a significant reduction in vehicle movements related to both uses. So in conclusion, the application is recommended for approval as per the conditions in the committee report and also the levels condition in the update sheet. And I'll be happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. We have 3 people pre-registered to speak. Firstly, we have Peter Palmer, who is the business owner, and then Elizabeth Butler, the secretary of the Arms House, who we've already sort of spoken with her about how the timing is going to be split. So the bell will go in at the right time. Welcome.
Good evening. I took over a lease.
Could you hit the button, please?
I took over a lease 4 years ago at Wargrave High Street, running a car business. I've done really well, turning over 40 cars a month. I've noticed all the kind of businesses in Wargrave are disappearing because they're being allowed to be turned into houses or flats. People aren't happy about this. In a minute, you're just going to have houses in a high street. That's not what the high street's for. Listen, I haven't got anywhere to go, okay? A guy's bought the premises with lots of money, okay? And if you approve this planning, you're going to put 30 people out of work, okay? I think you need to consider our views. And basically, there's danger in the high street at the moment. And what you're about to do is to shut an access point off on the corner of that road and move it further to the danger point. I've watched 4 years of that road, okay? I know that high street, that corner, more than anyone. I've asked people to listen to me. The guy sat there for a day, just, you know, clicking, you know, one day there'll be quiet. 3 days later, there'll be Arctics, there'll be fire engines, there'll be ambulances coming down that road. And what you're about to approve will cause mayhem in Wargrave. It's been there 70 years, why change it? It's a commercial property.
Okay, thank you.
Improve the garage, if you take the canopy down, spend some money on the garage, people want that. They don't want housing in the high street. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Butt.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, ladies and councillors. I'm Secretary to the Trustees of Woodcliff Almshouses. Our objections are the increased use of the narrow track that leads from Wargrave Hill to the almshouses, the insufficient car parking spaces in the rear element of the development, no room for delivery vans or visitors, leading to additional danger to the footpath users. Also the possibility of the almshouses grounds being used for parking and or turning, thus endangering our elderly residents. The increased use of the track will have an impact on highway safety at the entrance to Wargrave Hill, which has poor sight lines. The track is in poor condition, which will be exacerbated by any heavy traffic or increased traffic. The probable issues with refuse collection, as the lorries do not drive up the track. Special arrangements would have to be made. Further objections are the development will also increase parking problems in an area with woefully inadequate parking. The site will be overdeveloped, which is out of keeping with the conservation area locality. There is no affordable housing provision on the site, and of course we have the loss of a local viable garage of value to the community. Points which might be considered: to remove the rear element of the proposal so that an already dangerous track is not made more dangerous, and will negate the need for a contribution for the developer to improve the vision display and road widening in Wargrave Hill, or for the developer to make a contribution to improve vision display and widening on Wargrave Hill. In the event of the proposal being approved, a planning condition is needed to prevent any use of the track for access of construction traffic from Wargrave Hill. The almshouses residents need unimpeded access at all times for themselves, as well as for emergency vehicles and visitors. Pedestrian safety should be improved on the pavement on the high street. Affordable housing should be provided on site. And landscape management plan to minimise the sight line obstruction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Call upon the Ward Council then, John Wilson.
First of all, thank you very much for altering the agenda so that I could attend another meeting. I'm very grateful. And it's quite unusual for me to be here in that in the 6 years I've only been here at Planning Committee about twice, I think, and this is one of them. It is a loss of amenity, and I think of some of the benefits that the planning officers suggested are very doubtful, particularly vehicle movements, and the vehicle movements of the current site are very small, and the 11 dwellings will have considerably more vehicle movements. I'm not sure that the relocation of the site, the entrance is very beneficial. Whilst the site may or may have not cost the developer a great deal, there is no reason why there should not be provision for affordable housing. Walgrave needs affordable housing as it needs businesses to be able to continue as a viable community. Traditional council housing is disappearing when it is sold and replaced by cheaper housing elsewhere in the borough at greater volume, which is an almost unarguable case. Normally we would expect 2 to 3 houses of affordable housing which could be administered by the almshouses trustees. The site butts up to other development on one side, a footpath path next to the almshouses, the High Street and Walgrave Hill. Walgrave Hill, as you will have seen, is a very narrow road and very dangerous for parking. I expect in time it will be double yellow lines. The High Street is chicaned to calm traffic and to give some very much needed parking to those who live on the High Street. Apart from early in the morning when commuters have left for work, parking is a premium in the centre of Walgrave and cannot easily cope with the demand. The track leading to the almshouses is used to access 2 plots and 4 parking spaces. This would be very unsuitable for works traffic and cannot be used for commercial vehicles, deliveries, waste and builders. Currently the weekly rubbish is put out onto Walgrave Hill for collection. Whilst there is little alternative, the main site is access to the High Street and onto the High Street. For most of the day this will only be possible by arresting the traffic, which will be hazardous and disruptive. Walgrave is not sustainable as developers and planners would like you to believe. All the shops have disappeared, but for one small convenience store on Victoria Road, a great distance from the site. You can eat and drink and get drunk within walking distance, but shopping and most amenities need a car. There is a bus service, admittedly, and of course a train. However, pragmatically, the people who will buy these houses must be reasonably wealthy and will have at least 2 cars per dwelling. The development proposes 11 dwellings with 26 bedrooms. Potentially this is 52 vehicles. Again, pragmatically, the planners should be looking at least 22 parking spaces, plus say 4 visitors if there is to be no spillage elsewhere. But the scheme provides for 17 parking spaces, which is 1.5 per dwelling, including visitors, which is like the much derided Prescott guidelines, and which is by my estimation some 10 parking spaces short, and by my calculation does not even respect our guidelines. Furthermore, vehicle manoeuvrability in the site is so restricted in the main site as it is the minor site that it prohibits commercial vehicles, deliveries, waste and builders. You, our councillors, have identified congestion as the biggest issue from development. By permitting this application, you'll be increasing congestion by tipping surplus car parking onto already congested roads and further restricting already congested roads. There is no surplus car parking available for this to happen.
And last sentence.
Last sentence. You are quasi-judicial. You don't have to follow the recommendation under English common law. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for explaining it again.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. I also took some notes listening to the speakers there, which I would just like answered first before I go to the committee. I'd like to comment on the employment loss, how dangerous that corner is, the increase of use on the road to the almshouse, the level of car parking, the refuse collection, and no affordable housing. We just have some comments on those and then I'll open it up to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll let Chris deal with the highs issues in a moment. Starting with the loss of employment, that is something that obviously has to be weighed up, and the loss of any local business is obviously undesirable. In terms of this application, our policy team have looked at it with regard to employment studies that they conduct as part of the current local plan and also the emerging local plan. They haven't raised an objection to the loss of the B2 use, and they've cited significant extant permissions for employment development and also ones which will be forthcoming, and they then consider that the loss of a BT use in general is objectionable for this application. One thing about this site as well to take into account is that quite a bit of the site is residential, so there's no loss of employment there. And in terms of the garage, I think don't know the actual proportions, but quite a lot of the garage is for sales, which is sui generis use. It's only the B's of the garage, which is sort of considered more important in policy terms. I have mentioned obviously the benefits of the scheme in terms of it being within a conservation area and also a residential area where you wouldn't, if you were starting today, that isn't really a site where you would put those sort of uses in, so I do feel there are benefits to that. I guess the other issue is sort of taking that to its ultimate conclusion, and if it was to be refused on that issue, I think we'd really struggle with an inspector when you're weighing up the that sort of business with housing, considering how sort of appeal decisions have gone for new housing in the borough. So I do think it would be extremely difficult to sustain an objection on that basis. With regard to refuse collection, there is the refuse collection to the rear. There is a bin store which is on the site plan, which is just here, and it's considered that residents of those properties will do what the existing property on the site does and will wheel them onto closer to Wargrave Hill on collection days. And that's not considered a sort of an objectionable arrangement, considering the existing property does that at the moment. With regard to affordable housing, obviously you have to be careful because viability is confidential, but in terms of the no affordable housing has been provided, it's clearly set out in national guidance, both in the NPPF and the planning practice guidance, that planning policy shouldn't ask for contributions which would then make the scheme unviable, and that it wouldn't otherwise come forward for a willing developer or landowner. The other thing about government guidance as well is it clearly says in the PPG and the NPPF that brownfield sites should be promoted in terms of their redevelopment, because obviously they're generally located within more sustainable locations, and there's benefits to developing previously developed land for housing, as opposed to, as we've heard from this committee on other applications tonight, of taking undeveloped greenfield sites and putting housing there. So there are benefits associated with that. The national guidance as well also recognises that brownfield sites are much harder to develop, both economically because there's an existing use value there which you can't get around, you have to pay the existing use value. A good way to put it is, for argument, if the developer goes to the existing house owners there and says, okay, your property's worth, say, as a random figure, £500,000, but we can't give you that because Wokingham Borough Council want this for other contributions, and therefore we can only give you £300,000. Of course, common sense says that the landowner then wouldn't release the site because it's clearly under the market value. So where there's a house on there and existing profitable uses, they have to pay that. There's no getting around. It's not a greenfield site where the land value would be considerably less. And that really is why brownfield sites are difficult to provide affordable housing, and sometimes there are viability issues, is because the existing use value does make it very difficult. The other problem with this site as well is that there will need remediation because there has been a petrol station, there will be petroleum tanks underground which will need to be remediated. It's also, as members saw, there's also quite a levels implication as well, and that will need to be taken into account in terms of engineering works to make parts of the site level to get development on there. So I understand the frustration with no affordable housing, but this has been looked at by external consultants, not just by the council, and unfortunately in this case it isn't viable, and the NPPF and the PPG suggests that you shouldn't refuse an application on that grounds if it's been demonstrated to be unviable. I think that covers everything.
That car parking and the increased use of the road, the track to the Arms House.
Yeah, in terms of the track to the road, I I'm looking at it correctly, that's the one up Walgrave Hill, and then obviously off at the top. Yeah, in terms of, there's already one. Oh, sorry, I'm doing that. In terms of the access off Walgrave Hill, there is already existing one property there, so it's only the addition of one extra, and obviously they're formalising the parking to the rear of that property. We have undertaken a review of the scheme that's put forward, as well as obviously looking at the accident data, and there's been nothing recorded for the last 5 years on Walgrave Hill. There have been some, there's been 2 slight accidents on the high street itself, but not as a result of the junction. There's obviously downstream or upstream of the junction with Walgrave Hill, and so that's been the basis of what we've assessed. In terms of the garage itself, I know it's been mentioned that the trips are going to be more extensive with the houses than they are for the existing garage. The existing use, and from the information that's obviously been provided for us that we've obviously been able to look at in terms of the trip generation, is that the garage generates more use than the houses currently would. And on that basis, we have no issue in terms of traffic. The access meets the visibility requirements, and again, we've got nothing to say there. I think Mark picked up on the refuse. Again, that would be no real difference to how refuse is collected now from the existing properties in the area. Granted, there are a few more, so it would mean the truck would need to stop for a couple of minutes potentially. But in that respect, again, we looked at the balance against the commercial waste that gets collected from the garage, which would be a different unit to the refuse truck that comes out for a residential unit, for example, so that's an extra vehicle, as well as potentially looking at the deliveries that drop off vehicles. So it could be, I'm not sure the sizes, but you know, they could come on 8 or 10, 11, 12 car transporters, which again stop in the high streets to come on site. So weighing up all of that, we have an issue in terms of highways. In terms of parking, I understand the comments have been made. They're made most weeks, most months at planning committee. We have a parking standard. The developer puts forward its provision for allocated, and then our calculator revises what unallocated provision is required. So just having a quick look at the calculator again, if they were to allocate all the 6-bedroom houses with parking spaces, then it gets it to 17 spaces. It requires 5, so that would be 12 allocated to each of the 6, and then 5 unallocated, which includes visitors and unallocated. And that brings us to the 17. But depending how they wish to promote